Good morning. It is 9:10 a.m. on Sunday, September 13th, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Today is Sunday, so I'm talking about my rewatch of The Legend of Korra with Season 2, Episode 12, Harmonic Convergence. Boom, 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 boom. And this is, of course, the episode that kind of tees up sort of a two-part finale. Although with the show, this serialized, the idea that you have two-part episodes is a little bit misleading. Because, I mean, they're really all continuing the same story. It's not a very episodic show in that regard. So obviously, we're following up on a number of things here. We left off last time with the Team Avatar getting the battleship, Varric's battleship, and hoping to use that to take over. Although, one of the things that they pretty much establish here is that there really isn't a crew on this battleship. It's really just them, which, I don't know, feels like a lazy plot point because, like they don't even have to establish, they don't have to, like, introduce and create a character for every member of the crew or something, but, like, to imply that it's really just them, like, who's piloting the ship? I don't know. I mean, that's maybe... I wouldn't have, I think, even complained about it if they hadn't had a line that, like, specifically implies that it's just the 7 of them on the ship. But in any event, we have, Korra doing a little bit of training with Tenzin to work off some energy and, I think it's partly both of them just sort of reforging their bond. They're both kind of stressed about what's going on, of course. In the meantime, we also have Mako looking on. And because we have the absolutely stupid plot point of Korra doesn't remember that they broke up, like that, again, I just wish that instead of going with some bogus pseudo-amnesia thing, they could have had her just want to get back together and he's too kind of spineless to tell her no. I feel like every single element of it could have been the same, only without it just being dumb that she just conveniently forgot just that part and seems to remember everything else for no reason. Whatever, I don't know. But in any event, we don't even get really Asami. Like, Asami, to her credit, is, able to understand that all of this is more important and she needs to set whatever feelings she has there aside and to contribute to the team. So good on her for that. But here we have the reversal from earlier in the season, which I feel like is a relatively nice setup in the sense that we have Mako now hesitating to tell Korra the truth and Bolin teasing him because, of course, earlier in the season with Eska and Desna, right? We had, Mako telling Bolin, oh, you'd have to just break up with the girl, just like pulling off a leech, just quick, tear it off. And Bolin now throwing that back at Mako's face. But at the same time, like, on the one hand, it's nice to bring that around again. On the other hand, it all feels kind of heightened and so serious that I'm not sure I necessarily love that they're I guess we need some jokes. But again, I think what's frustrating is that it's not bad writing to have Mako waffling like this. But it's certainly not an admirable thing for the character. Right? Like, but again, it's just like, I don't know, it feels like manufactured drama rather than like what would really happen. because again, like it's such a red flag that they had to make up partial amnesia in order to support this plot point. Like that they did that, like because it doesn't come from anything. Like if there was, oh well, anyway, okay, I'm protesting too much because I'm getting frustrated with elements of this season, and I'm also, I think, just looking ahead to book 3, which I definitely remember being a lot more fun. So anyway, so we have Mako continuing to not quite tell Korra what was really going on there. Asami is decided to back off and not focus on this right now, which is probably the right call. Korra is feeling very stressed about what are we going to do. It seems like this is really dangerous. How are we going to get in there and stop this harmonic convergence? Or, I mean, they're not stopping the harmonic convergence, but the goal to close one of the spirit portals before the harmonic convergence. Tenzin wants to save Jinora, but they don't even really know where her spirit is in the spirit world. But so they arrive at the south and get the, bad news that Korra's father and most of the southern forces have already been captured, and that even though they bring Jinora's body to Katara, Katara basically says, not only can I not help her, but it is to her credit and strength that she has already survived this long, meaning much longer? Oh, that's hard to say. So they know it's desperate, and I will say that all this gives multi-layered stakes to the whole plan, so that when it leads up to like this assault, and I think technically I was about to think of a scene that's later in the episode, but they come up with this plan to assault the Southern Spirit Portal so that Korra can get inside, and then from within the Spirit Realm close one of the portals, and that's the goal. So one of the other threads in this episode is that Boomi keeps bringing up these tall tales of unlikely military victories that almost always involve animals and antics, and Tenzin's getting really frustrated with him. But of course, the thread in this episode is that we see him actually accomplish an equivalent of one of these tall tales, which just raises, makes us wonder, like, are all of his stories actually true? Because that's kind of funny. Because, like, even just, they get the idea for the aerial assault from one of his stories, which, although it's not as successful as they hoped, because Unalaq is more prepared than they expected, but nonetheless, it's probably went better than it would have if they hadn't tried this plan. But so we get a big action sequence with Asami flying the plane with Bolin and Mako on the wings, doing their bending from there and using Varric's remote control explosives, and that's pretty cool. Meanwhile, we've got Tenzin, Kaya, Boomi, and Korra on the back of the flying bison, Oogie, and, just doing this aerial assault, and it's a pretty good action sequence, but unfortunately, it's just like there's just too much, and so they're, ultimately, we see Boomi, fall off of the flying bison, pulling a spirit off with him, which sets up the thing later, but, everyone else gets captured, and we get some good drama. I like how they've been slowly seeding in that Esna and Deska are increasingly concerned about what their father's doing. Like, they are increasingly worried. The stuff that he's saying seems stranger and stranger. He keeps revealing that, like, there's layers of his plan that he wasn't telling them about before, and he seems like he's only telling them now because he seems to think that it's too late for them for anything to change. And so we see their growing uncertainty, even as, it's ironic, I think, that they seem like they are getting closer to the point of doubting him, questioning him, maybe even turning against him. But unfortunately, because they are so adversarial with Korra, that when she pleads with them, like, can't you see how dangerous this is? Can't you see what he's trying to do? They get defensive about it, right? So, you know, we'll never doubt our father. He's the wisest man ever. If he says this is what's right, then it must be right. So, you know, we get that drama, but it's clearly setting up that they are having their own second thoughts about it. But in the meantime, we get the whole plot line of Boomi first, you know, engaging with this spirit. And there's some fun stuff in there because, like, he looks very silly doing his fancy boxing, but he does seem like he's actually, you know, doing pretty well in terms of, like, he's got some skill there, even though the spirit is just not very susceptible to being punched. And then, you know, we see him with a hidden knife that he throws pretty expertly. So, like, we definitely see he's got some moves. And then it turns out that the flute he was playing earlier, you know, calms the spirit. And so he gets this idea, oh, yeah, I will, you know, I'll try to play the flute to calm the spirits down. Unfortunately, it doesn't work on that. And then there triggers this whole chaotic thing where, you know, he ends up in a runaway mecha tank, and it basically flattens this whole camp and allows him to rescue the others, which is pretty fun. And it also just, like, it's to the point where they, like, how could you possibly have defeated this whole camp? And he's really at this point where he's like, I could tell them literally exactly what happened, and it's just going to sound like the tall tales that they keep telling me to shut up about. So, like, so that's all kind of fun. I like that stuff. And it also just, like, it's fun to see in some ways that Boomi represents a part of Aang that is really not reflected very much in Tenzin or Kaya, because Kaya seems very much more like Katara, right? You know, and it makes sense. You know, they're both women, they're both waterbenders, and they're, you know, so she's got a little bit, like, you almost see a little bit of Sokka in her, not to imply any sort of anything more than, you know, uncle and niece there, but just in slightly more sarcastic but still caring, you know, so she takes more after Katara. Tenzin, of course, is very serious. In some ways, that's like, you know, that just reflects all of the pressure he was put under, and so that's one side of Aang's personality. But Boomi seems to represent this more freewheeling, fun-loving side of Aang, and I think that's nice to see. So that's all fun. But then when it leads up to them all about to enter the portal, this is the scene I was kind of speaking of earlier, where despite some of the issues that I have had with the storytelling, it does nicely set up all these different layers of the stakes that everyone faces. Obviously, Janora's life hangs in the balance. That makes it small and personal. There's also the fact that Unalaq as a character was someone who said a lot of sympathetic things and then taught Korra a lot, but then kind of betrayed that he really had these ulterior sinister motivations all along. And so that makes it personal on that level, that they want to stop him personally, not just stop his plan from happening. But then there's also just this idea of him, you know, potentially, you know, ruining the world, covering it with darkness and chaos for 10,000 years, right? And his whole plan seems, you know, to create a dark avatar, all of that. But one, you know, but all at the heart of this plan, this idea that from his perspective, this idea that the spirits and the material world should not have been separated. And so this thing that the first Avatar did all those years ago, he shouldn't have. And that that's wrong. And that's what has the world out of balance. And, you know, the Avatar shouldn't be a bridge to the spirit world because there shouldn't be a separation at all. And so, on the one hand, we can say, like, it seems like a bad idea to release Vaatu, but other elements of that, like it ties back into this idea that, like, oh, well, his original pitch was like, yeah, it'll unite the northern and southern water tribes because they'll be able to, easily travel back and forth through the spirit world. And, but then, like, when Eska and Desna kind of mentioned that at the beginning, towards the beginning, he's like, nah, no, don't worry about that, because that's not even real. Because, like, the whole world's going to be so different, like, that issue will be meaningless. And so, so, like, there's just these huge stakes, right? So we go in, and now, because they've actually physically entered the spirit world through the portal, they can use their bending. So we get the big fight with Bolin and Mako taking on Unalaq, while Tenzin, Kaya, and Boomi try to go find Jinora, presumably, although they kind of disappear after they head off in that direction, so we'll catch up with them more later, presumably. I mean, I know I've seen it, but anyway, and then Korra trying to close the spirit portal, but as we see by the end of the episode, she's too late. And so the harmonic convergence starts. We see the two spirit portals link up once again, the entire planet, and they literally have a shot from space of the whole planet being covered with this weird spiritual energy field, like these two sort of dimensions phasing into each other. We cut to Republic City, where we see, just to prove to us that it's happening all over the world. And then we see Vaatu is released. Oh, ha, ha, ha! Villainous laugh. And that's where we leave, of course, this episode. So we'll be back next week for the next episode to cover, to move forward with this big finale. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.